Hey, I'm Chris Longfield. I'm with Dell Technologies, a DevOps engineer there, and a small observability team that I've learned today is the centralized model. So we'll be talking about that a little bit, and I'll be sharing some of those experiences with you.
Excellent. Glenn, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Hey everyone, I'm Glenn McCoyne. I'm with TekStream Solutions. I'm our VP of Strategic Initiatives. And we are a digital resilience solutions company focusing on, obviously, observability, SRE, cloud ops, infrastructure hardening, support, and a big area for us is security. So I'm excited to weave some of this together for us here today.
Excellent. So folks, what we're going to do here is sort of a roundtable panel discussion. I wanted to take advantage of the fact that we have Chris and Glenn over here, and they both, between them, have a great deal of expertise around observability and the broader IT area as well. So I have some questions that I'm going to put to them. They'll go back and forth. We'll talk a little bit about their contrasting experiences. But if you folks have questions, commentary along the way, I think that would be really great to hear as well. And I'm happy to repeat your questions, but this really is an opportunity for you to kind of converse practitioner to practitioner, person living the dream, to person living the dream. All right, before we get started, you explained your background a little bit, but I thought it would be fun to talk about a little bit more. Maybe we can start, Chris. What is the most embarrassing app on your phone?
Oh. So this was the heads up of potential questions. I did have to look this up. I've got 100 apps on my phone, and I use like 7 of them. So I reviewed it before this, and I believe the most embarrassing, for me personally, is Tiny Zoo.
Tiny Zoo?
Tiny Zoo.
What is Tiny Zoo?
It's a really old one. It's one of those things where you have to do a little piece of work, and it enables you to do another little piece of work faster, and then you do another piece of work faster. So really just like observability.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. It all comes full circle. Yeah. Glenn, how about you?
Well, I had to scroll through a bit as well. Probably the most embarrassing thing is just the volume of apps that are on the phone that I feel like customers with data, they just have data everywhere and they don't know what or why, so that's my apps. But GarageBand, maybe it's there by default, I don't even remember, but I'm not sure I've ever opened it. And I'm even a has-been musician and I still just nothing with it. So.
Well, at least you tried.
Yeah.
Step 1. All right, I told you guys it's going to be a serious, detailed, intellectual discussion. All right, so we talked a little bit about your backgrounds, both of you, right? The big question that's top of mind for me, and Chris, I'd love to start with you over here, is why is observability important to your business, right? Or to the business of your customers as well? Both parts of it are important. I'd love to just kind of get your take on it from a business perspective.
Yeah, so in the organization that I work for is kind of called TechOps within Dell, and we're like a layer of services that developers use to write their code, right? So we're like own the Git parts, we own Jira, we own the whole process for which people are doing their development. And for us, it's really important to know how well that's going for them. Like, we're the middle of all of these processes, so if something is not working or something is slow, or God forbid something completely breaks, then 10,000 developers are stuck, right? So it's really important for us to be able to see what's going on in that black box and expose that data.
Okay. And is that actually 10,000 developers?
Yeah, there's 10,000 developers that rely on our services. It's
wow.
true, yeah.
And growing, I imagine, too.
Yeah, let's say it's growing.
Glenn, how about you? How would you say observability is important to TekStream's business and your customers?
Yeah, I'm going to answer on behalf of customers if I could, and I failed to mention in my intro that I work with some selected customers on strategic initiatives that they have, and observability is really an area where we're seeing a lot of movement right now. There's just a lot of acceleration there. So one customer that comes to mind in particular is a large enterprise. They're very distributed geographically. They have venture arms. They have small operations, large operations, a lot of innovation happening. And so just the sheer volume of what's happening and their need to understand that. But they also, we talked earlier about this struggle with governance and innovation and whatnot. So enabling people to go build and deploy without getting into trouble or over their heads is really important. And in a lot of cases, these are customer-facing services that they have to know are going to deliver. So it's a critical function.
Okay. So that brings up a really interesting point, and I think, Chris, I'd love your take on this as well. You mentioned customer-facing services there. Have you seen any difference really in how observability is approached for customer-facing services versus not customer-facing, purely internal ones? Any?
Yeah, I'll start. One is just pure speed to market. We have one particular scope where the ask was, hey, customers are using this already, and our clarity of the health of the application is marginal, so anything you do is better than what we had today. How fast can you go? Or better than we had yesterday. How fast can you go? And so it's just an example of the pace of innovation that's happening, and we're going to talk about this a little more in the context of AI, but speed to market is really critical there.
Yeah, so I mean, you have really different objectives there, right? So for us, I mean, we consider the developers to be our customers. So for that customer-facing thing, we want, the business value for them is getting that code out fast, getting the PR through, et cetera. On the other side are our ops teams, right? So our operational teams for every tool, and typically people are segmented across different tools, so they have expertise in that particular system. Like they want to get to the MTTX quickly, right, when there is a problem or there's an SLO violation. So it's slightly different goal in terms of what you're trying to support there, and sometimes that can be different data, right? So we're collecting different things, present it in different ways.
Gotcha. Now, this is going to be a difficult question for you, just considering the volume of engagements you see and the size of Dell itself. But what challenges do you often hear from your internal customers, whether they happen to be focused more on internal applications or on external ones? And what challenges have you faced in your journey of maturity within observability as well?
Yeah, when I think about this, I mean, I think a lot more about our particular challenges, which I think people have talked about a little bit here today as well. But, as I mentioned before, we're kind of doing the centralized model. We call ourselves an enablement team because we're trying to get, everybody that owns these different tools, getting that data in so that they can do their operations well. And our problem is just that takes a lot of collaboration, right? So you've got people that are experts in their domain, but not necessarily observability experts. And you don't necessarily want 100 deeply connected observability experts. Like you don't need every tool owner to know everything there is about Grafana, but people need to have enough skill to be able to use that effectively and use the tools that we're showing to them. And they also don't have time to do the research on some of the cool features that are in the cloud. We're here to learn that, expose that to people, get them using it effectively. So I think especially Dell is like a global organization, so there's time zone challenges and different priorities among different teams. And so that's, like, I was actually really interested in some of the stuff that you were talking about earlier with culture, and some of the other people had mentioned, like Kyle was talking about how we might help overcome some of those challenges. Because that, for us, I think has been kind of one of the main sticking points.
Yeah.
I would just add that I really enjoyed the comments earlier about understanding the behavioral change that has to happen and creating a culture for that. I see challenges around adoption. I mean, almost inevitably, there is some sponsor somewhere in the organization that says, hey, I see a path forward, here's a platform, here's a capability, but without alignment from, say, line of business or other areas that are going to provide the funding and alignment for that, then adoption struggles. Adoption struggles in the developer community. It also struggles on the line of business. It struggles out in the venture arms and innovation. So connecting those worlds together, and that's a lot of the work that I've personally done and some of our teams have done, is we'll work with one part of the organization that's finding some traction in one area, and we'll go grab another part of the organization and bring them together and say, hey, let's share what we're learning. Let's share these opportunities for better adoption and funding. Another area that we're really seeing some recent traction in is for these customer-facing, mission-critical type of application areas, looking at the customer experience and then working backwards from there into the incident response and even support metrics and saying, well, how can we define a better customer experience? How can we enable that through better support? And then we're asking for adoption in observability to enable that customer experience and the lower support costs that go along with that. So those are challenges that we're seeing where, frankly, there's some exciting changes happening.
Okay. So the cultural barriers, the cultural differences, and then the different focus that's needed for customer-facing applications. Okay. When you talk about your platform today, right? We talked before about how most organizations have a large number of tools that they would consider to be part of their observability stack in some way. When you chose yours, Glenn, at Dell, what were the important criteria in your choice of tools, platforms, as well as partners? Sorry.
Was that for me or
Yeah, it
for
was
Chris?
Sorry, it was
For me?
place. Go ahead. Either of you.
Pick one. We can both answer.
Yeah, both of you, please.
Sure. So, I mean, I think the three main things that we were kind of looking at when we were trying to bring this all together is flexibility, kind of standards, and that single pane of glass idea. So, flexibility, the big tent philosophy is super helpful in getting some immediate adoption because you're not having to roll out the collection to everything all at once. People are already doing some kind of observability, so we can bring that data in, and that leads to that single pane of glass, but it's accentuated when we have something like Grafana Alloy, which is open telemetry standards, right? It's a wraparound open telemetry collector. So that gives us some independence in the future. Of course, we'll always be staying with Grafana, but if there were other tool choices that had to change, that gives us that anchor in standards that is useful. And then once we're doing that, we're getting the metrics, the logs, the traces, hopefully profiles soon, and then we're able to see that in the single pane of glass, connect things together as other people mentioned, and that gives us like a better sense of what's going on with those particular tools. So those three things were kind of the big drivers that we didn't see all of that in other tools that we evaluated.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just echo the data that we've seen up here. I mean, every customer I've talked to has said lots of tools, probably too many tools. Mm-hmm. Lots of data, probably too much data, probably stored in too many places. So when I think about the future and the pace of innovation that we're all experiencing, I want to see a pace of innovation of a platform. So when I look at Grafana, I'll make a plug for Gartner here, but if you look at their Magic Quadrant for observability, I think the right year is 2022. Grafana wasn't on the map, and today they're arguably in the leading position, and that's just in a few years. To me, that just screams pace of innovation. And so if you add to that the unknowns that we all wrestle with every day about what will things look like even 6 months out, we just don't know. And so I look for a company that is very open-minded in their thinking so that they can adopt to whatever our future becomes. Then I look for a large base of talent. We all have to learn things quickly, yeah. But there is it 25 million Grafana users?
25 million.
About. That's just one metric, but it tells me that there are a lot of people that already know something, that are interested in this. And so if I'm a business, I have to build things quickly, change quickly, then I need talent to engage, whether that's people to hire, consultants to bring in, or whatever. And then I also want flexibility. I want to be able to try things, to build, to experiment without having to make a big long-term commitment to a platform. And so I think the OSS capability plays nicely there. We're dabble in it, or frankly, on a cloud subscription. But I just see that as being a really critical step, is just do something, experiment quickly. I wanted to tie in, there was mention earlier of the one-way and two-way doors. I'm a former AWSer as well, and I really buy into that. Most decisions are two-way decisions. If it doesn't pan out, you can turn around and come back without tremendous cost. So acknowledge when you're facing a decision, which is it? If it's a one-way door, then do all your planning and analytics and be very careful and intentional. Otherwise, speed is more valuable. Just do it, try it, see what you learn from it, adjust and go. And so having the different options of how to use a platform enables that in a great way.
That's a really good piece of advice, and I see common themes between your answer and then yours, Glenn, as well, because when you talk about flexibility, and you reiterated flexibility, but you also talked about looking into the future, I'm curious, how far into the future do you look when you say, is this platform going to be flexible? Are you thinking for the next 6 months, for the next year, for the next 2 years? What is a typical period that gives you confidence in your experience?
I mean, I agree with the previous presenter that anything past a year is like, if you don't like what you're doing now, wait a year. It's going to be different, right?
I would give a counterpoint to that. It's hard to retool. I was just talking to a person yesterday that said, "Hey, we're somewhat migrating from one hyperscaler to another," and I said, "Man, that's a big lift." And he said, "Yes, it's hard." Platform changes, I mean, they're necessary to some degree, but it's also a lift. And so I try and at least think about 3 to 5 years out, because think about adoption and how quickly people change their behaviors. So I try and look further out. And again, I tie it back into my prior comments about flexibility of options, architectures, licensing, models, resourcing, all that stuff gives you a longer runway, I think.
So is AI going to blow all that up, though? Like, I mean, right? We're just all experimenting with this new technology, and it's just changing the way that we're thinking about stuff. Like, it
Yes,
just
it
seems
will.
so. Yeah, it seems so hard to make that roadmap that goes longer.
Yeah. Which actually brings me to the next question I was going to ask you is, how do you see AI shaping the future of observability? Right? In terms of automation, in terms of generating new insights, things are moving so fast, and the crown seems to change on a weekly basis between the leading players at the market.
Yeah, I mean, right now we're implementing the I think it's open source. Yeah, the open source MCP server for Grafana, and we're looking forward to like talking to our data, right? Like that's the idea. You connect this to an LLM, it's got your data in the system. You ask questions, you learn stuff. So, I mean, I think that's a really exciting thing that we can do right now. I think the overall vision, and Dell is really big on agentic AI as well, is systems that are watching this data, they're finding those anomalies, it passes it off to an RCA agent, the agent does the RCA, then that passes it off to something that could write some code or configuration that would go into Git, fix that problem. You get a human in the pull review, right? You get some review capability, but a lot of this work that people are doing now that is represented in these MTTXs is just super shortened, or at least that's the dream, right? So if we can get to that, I think we're all going to have really different jobs. Yeah.
Agreed.
Lots of thoughts there from the audience, I'm sure.
What's that?
No, I was saying it sounds like the audience had a lot of thoughts over there. What did you want to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I mean, with the advent of AI, certainly there's going to be more volume of every layer, every angle, everything. And so the ability to sort through the velocity and the volume, weed out the noise, and discern action is going to become more and more critical. We all know that each of us are going to have to manage more information personally, and we're going to need help with that. So I think about when you go to see a doctor, a specialist, how much time do you spend in the office, and how much of that time is actually with the doctor? I think for our support agents, our SREs, et cetera, we're going to move more and more to that, where things are teed up, and we enable people with great context, great history, great suggestions, but we still leverage the discernment of humans to do at least the critical things. And I think we're also going to see automation when there's high fidelity of context and data and history, and there's a lower consequence of action. I think we're going to see a lot of automation there, but certainly faster. Everything's going to be faster. I mean, it really is a pivotal point in time. And that's why we're investing in this practice and growing it right now, because to your point, if we don't do this well, then all this hype and all these, look at all of the spending that's going into infrastructure right now, whether it's energy or data centers, that's all to build more stuff. that we're going to be managing. So it's a critical point in time.
That's a really interesting topic overall, right? Because one of the backbones of sort of the series of talks we've had today has been around how do you organize the people and the processes to be able to deal with the technical challenges we have in observability. And we talked about if the volume of innovation is going to increase, the complexity is going to increase, data volumes are going to explode, one might argue that the centralized model that has been the go-to model for more mature organizations, I wouldn't say it'll go away, but you might say that it would have to evolve and perhaps put more capabilities in the hands of developers or other parts of the organization as well. So today, if you look at how your teams are organized, keeping in mind that you are at the center of the AI revolution, Chris, right? How are you planning to evolve your observability team organization tomorrow? And if you could contrast that with today as well.
Yeah, I mean, just to call back to so for us, that challenge before of the collaboration with teams where we've got the subject matter experts for various tools that we need, their help to do things. I think fleet management is kind of opening us up a little bit to be able to get in there and standardize things a little better. So for us, that's a new thing that looks very exciting in terms of making that centralized organization work better. So I don't know that it actually changes the way that we organize it, but it gives us a tool that lets us, get to all those things, have recipes for the various tools, add a security layer that's consistent across all those different tools. So that's kind of the hope that I have going in the short to medium term that will help us accelerate our observability journey.
That's a good point, and especially as you value flexibility, no matter how the organization evolves, if you feel confident the fleet management can keep up and adapt to whatever you need to do, that bodes well for its future within your stack. Thoughts, Glenn? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to share a customer that has a little bit of both. They have a little bit of centralized, a little bit of decentralized. Large enterprise, tens of billions in revenue. And the centralized team does manage multiple platforms. They have a roadmap, a vision. They have programs to drive adoption, technical and business side. But they've also allowed for other parts of the organization to make their own choices. And like was mentioned earlier, if you choose to deploy and you're not following our standards or our platforms, then good luck. Happy to help later, but let us know what you learn otherwise. And they've really embraced both models, and they've done a good job of collaborating back and forth. And so, yes, there's a little bit of downside to probably any model, but they're also getting the upsides of both because they collaborate. I've also seen other enterprises that have both without the collaboration, and that doesn't lead to fruit. And this particular customer has also allowed for multiple deployment models of Grafana in the environment. And they learn from each other in both scenarios. And they could argue pros and cons of both. But overall, the organization is flourishing. And at times they work together to drive business value. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think it's been pretty cool to see.
Yeah, for sure. So as we get to kind of the close of this one, I have one final question for both of you, and I also wanted to throw a question open to the audience, right? You've heard the themes of adoption, governance, people relationships, and business value echoed throughout the day over here. So does anybody have any creative ways in which you have been able to grow the adoption of your observability platform, whatever it is? This is a great venue to kind of just share nuggets. Yeah, please.
So I run the observability team for Cisco Collaboration, and we had a couple of different things that we did. One is when we built out, we started in one part of Collab, and we would find other teams that had little Prometheus or Grafana stacks running, and we'd kind of just onboard them. We wouldn't do a big planning session and a quarterly review. We kind of just grab the data and then show the value. Sort of the old adage, beg for forgiveness instead of asking permission. And it worked, and we're about, I looked while I was sitting here, we're at 500 million active series now across a dozen Mimirs, and we're at the point now where teams come to us. We are the default. And they don't want to be in the business of running their own stack. So I guess, you know, that's our story. I'm wondering, Glenn or Christopher, if that resonates with either of you, that strategy of grab the data, and once you got to critical mass, did the teams just come to you as the default?
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of a variation on like show the value, right? So I think a lot of our better successes have come when we're showing people like, look what's going on. And I think you were calling it application observability earlier. I know it as asserts, but like, look what's going on here in your Kubernetes cluster. And people are like, oh, wow. Like my Kubernetes cluster has a Grafana built in, but it can't do this, right? Like, because it's some bundled thing. It's not the cloud features. So that thing of like when people get to see it, like once the data's in there and they can see it and they start to use it, then it becomes a must-have and not a like, oh, that's a cool little thing that you built there, right? So that's key to getting adoption across the organization for sure.
Anyone else from the audience want to volunteer a spicy take on adoption here?
Just want to comment on, I've done a very similar approach where I'm working as a quick serve restaurant in Atlanta. And while I've heard mostly here talked about approaches for technology groups or organizations, the same approach can be used for product development as well. And what I've had a lot of success with is reaching out to product owners and people that are working directly with customers and saying, hey, what do you need to know? We have all this data here. What questions do you have for us? What can we possibly tell you? What questions are you getting that you wish you could get answers to more quickly? And just build dashboards for those topics, and they end up getting used very quickly and with a lot of energy. And so had a lot of success with that approach.
It's great to hear.
Yeah.
I think that combination of, I guess, curiosity about their world as well as the ability to help them can be very powerful. Is there another one? Or okay. One final one, folks, right? So if you have one recommendation for the folks in the room who are embarking on an observability journey or a strategy overhaul project, what would that be?
So I think people referred earlier to the to maturity models for observability, and I've seen one a couple of times that kind of followed what people were talking about earlier, where you've got like the reactive phase where you're going on a machine and you've got logs on the machine, right? Not very good. You've got a second level of like siloed monitoring, but the data's not very consistent. At the third level, you're collecting data in a centralized place, you're getting telemetry logs, et cetera. If you go a level above that, you're automating more stuff, you're using predictive analysis to see what's going on in your systems. And then finally, the whole, the glory of the AI world that's self-healing, aligned with your business objectives, right? So if you look at, I think it's very helpful to look at that maturity model or any maturity model, right, like have been presented earlier today and say, well, where am I? Can I get to the next step, right? What is the next small step? And this was also mentioned earlier as well. I think it's super useful. Take a small step. I would throw in there like automate that small step, because if you want to do it with another team, now you've got a little piece of something that makes it go fast. But just like small steps, right? We did try to boil the ocean our first year. It was not particularly successful, right? Yeah.
Okay, great tip.
I would just say run.
Away or towards?
Start with the visualization for your first meeting. Like, give people things to react to, and we have a window to get ahead. And so, many are the initiatives that succeeded by moving quickly, and many are those that have failed because they analyzed too much up front. We all know it. So this is a platform and an ecosystem that enables you to experiment, try things, unwind it if it doesn't work, but build and innovate fast. Go, go, go would be my, and we're doing this in strategy kickoffs right now, where we're starting. It feels so crazy, but we're starting by building, and then we're talking about it and planning kind of around that. But it's just easy to unwind it if it wasn't a good idea. But then you have that behind you. I know it's crazy, but that's where I'm at.
Well, how do you talk people out of the Big Bang Theory if they want to go big? Difficult one.
I'm going to let that one go.
All right, folks. So questions from the audience, right? Anything that's top of mind. What would you like to learn? What would you like to ask our panelists today?
I don't have a question, but I do want to piggyback on the last question and something that what I've noticed too to help kind of enhance the observability team itself for one of my customers, and it's Dell actually, is creating a community, and we have like community events bi-weekly where we do, crowd-driven enablement, right? So when your stakeholders have questions, have them dictate and build that community of the users and create that user group mentality. It really kind of helps expand what you're trying to do.
So kind of a callback to the center of excellence
Yeah.
from the previous, yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Exactly. You're trying to build a community, right? Like you're building your own internal Grafana community within your business, and you want those champions. You want the people that are excited about this stuff and see the value, because that will spread to the folks that might not be on the same page as that and might like have a different opinion. And then they say, oh, wow, well, my DevOps engineer number 2 just solved this problem, lowered our MTTX by doing this, this, and this. Let me try that. Let me start to, see the value there. So community is important.
If there are no questions from the audience, then, well, I guess we will wrap. Thank you very much, Lynn and Chris, for all of your insights. Really appreciate the time you took today.